And welcome back to part 31 of Final Fantasy XII, where today we're going to be exploring a new area in the form of the Harrrrd Steep, and then finally pushing towards Giruvegan to find out what Dr. Cid has in store for us. The Harrrd Steep is actually entirely optional, because this is just a path that links back round to the SHAREfactory uplands. There is a crumbled rock on the far right side of SHAREfactory uplands. That rock is now moved to explore this. But if you're going for all the hunts, side quests, or just trying to find all the technique and spells, you do want to go through here, even if it is a pretty sizable area. And it's not optional as in dangerous optional, like say Xertamin Caverns or the Deadlands in Necrohol. It's just kind of, you don't have to do it to continue the plot. I think it's the easiest way to put it. It just happens to be optional, not that it's a dangerous optional extra challenge. But it has a nice track and we'll still be exploring all of it. There is a side quest involving the windmills, where if you interact with certain ones you can lead you to certain locations and stuff like that, but we'll be more involved with that as time goes on. There is a I want to say spell. It's either a spell or a technique, but I think it's a spell in the area just south of the save crystal. But guessing it is kind of annoying because it's only a small percentage chance that chest will spawn, and so you'll be entering and leaving the area quite regularly. Like, the diamond armlet doesn't affect its chances of appearing as far as I'm aware, so just keep on exiting and entering until it happens. What I tend to find works is leave the area by one screen, but because if you're playing on PS4, this is, by the way, quit the game and then just load your autosave and re-enter that screen, and every single time I had to do that, it's worked. Like, I don't know if it's just RNG manipulation on like a basic level, but it's always worked every time I've done that. Just like loading to the title screen and then reloading the autosave, it's accepted it. But I don't actually get this spell or technique because when I was first running through, I was like, look, if it's here, it's here. If I don't get it when I'm passing through, I'm not going to grind for it now, I'll just come back for it later. And that's what I end up doing. I end up coming back for it later. There's a video of cleanup actually after we defeat the final boss, where before I start doing some of the much harder post-game stuff, I make sure to clear out the spell and technique list. But this area is a lot more chill than where we've been. Like I said, this isn't the whole part. The Harrrd Steep is only taking up the first chunk of it. We will be working our way through the I was going to say Salika wood, but that's the wrong wood. We'll be going through the woods that is linked to Giruvegan. The area south of the Golmore jungle where Fran's village was. You can also find shield worms around the place here as well, which aren't too bad, but every worm you encounter you kind of want to fight to get a feel for how they work, because a lot of them later on kind of don't care for the actual way the game works. They will have instant casting, so they will be attacking regardless of how full their attack bar is, and so you need to be almost kind of prepared for that, so then when you get to the bigger worms later on, you can deal with them effectively. But these are the windmills. There's 10 of them and you can interact with any of them, and there'll be a Moogle in a different spot that will tell you what's going on with the Moogle work. The Crafts Moogles League has been called in service to all 10 of the windmills on the steep. This is the number 1. And then that's number 2, that's number 3. Just because I wasn't 100% sure if I could do any of the side quests now, I do interact with every single one of the windmills we pass by, but the only one we can really do anything with is Windmill 10, and that's tied to a hunt that we haven't accepted yet anyway. Jesus. The party is just still getting stronger. If you've been following along and you've just done all the hunts that you can do, like the one against Begamnon and Gilgamesh, and you've managed to survive, by the time you get back to the Harrrd Steep, you are going to feel a little bit overpowered, as you're probably noticing most of my party are one-shotting everything except the damn birds. And the shield worms, but that's expected because the shield worms are supposed to be bigger threats. So as you can see, because of it, if it's not something that will just die as I pass it by, I'm kind of just leaving it alone, because it's like I'd just be wasting time. More so with the bird things, because the only one who can really seem to hit it is Balthier. That's the thing, I'm not sure if there is actually like an ultimate crossbow, like a really powerful crossbow, or what one's the strongest of the lot. But the crossbow that Balthier's got on him now, he kind of ends up sticking with for a lot longer than I expected him to. Like, we're talking not until nearly post game. Like, it's either like second to last part of the main journey or the first part in the post game. He gets the next crossbow, and I was a bit like, huh. Like, his crossbow he's got works out in his favour because the bolts he has with him are amazing, and when the crossbow later on starts to wear out its welcome a little bit because it's just not as strong as what Barsh and Ash have got, it's fine because his magic ends up taking more dominance then anyway. Because later on I eventually put a gambit on where it says if there are 3 or more enemies in the area, he will always use Scathe, because, you know, Scathe, strongest non-elemental attack, but it's also got an area of effect. So I have him set to that, so if we start getting hounded, he can just laser beam them to death. But then he gets another one that is similar non-elemental, but only tier 3 damage, and it only hits 1 enemy, and so I put that as his basic one because it's still non-elemental, so it's always going to hit. So I just set that in place of his basic attack. So if anything's still weak to an element, he'll still use that over it, but if not, he will use Shock, I think is the skill I put on him. Because the way it works, the top 4 skills is Shock, Scourge, Flare... No, Shock... Yeah, Shock, Scourge, Flare and Scathe. I always get muddled with Scourge and Scathe. Shock is non-elemental heavy damage, so tier 3 damage, so that's the same as your Firegur, Blizzaga, Thundergur. Scourge is the same but group wide. Flare is tier 4 single target. Scathe is tier 4 multi-target. So Flare is still amazing to have in this game, even if it feels a little bit under just because Scathe exists and so it's been outmatched by something. But oddly enough, and I still stand by that I find this kind of odd, there's no Meteor spell in this game. Like, not having the Ultima spell I can kind of get, because if they had to try and balance getting Ultima spell in this game, I think all hell would break loose, trying to find a way to squeeze it in. So making Ultima one of the names of the Espers instead just made sense. But Meteor was just Flare that had a chance of hitting multiple times. Like, sometimes it would just hit the once, but sometimes it would hit like 5 or 6 times. I think they could have tried to find a way to balance it. Like, instead of making it based on Flare's damage, make it based on Shock's damage, so it's heavy, but just can hit multiple times. I think that would have worked out efficiently for balancing, and would have been a great tool for magic users. I just imagine the MP cost would have been through the roof. As long as they don't do Final Fantasy IV's version of Meteor, which I've never understood what happened with 4's Meteor. Like, so much of the plot revolves around characters getting the Meteor spell to take on great evils, just for the spell to be really, really bad, because its accuracy is abysmal. It's casting time, because spells have longer casting time, so they take longer for you to use them. It's not the longest of any spell in the game, so it takes forever for you to even use it, and then it doesn't do as much damage as Flare 9 out of 10 times because its accuracy is so terrible. And so instead of spamming Meteor, when you get the green haired kid, I forget her name, I want to say Raina, but for some reason I think that's wrong. But when you get her strong enough to use Meteor, you never use Meteor, you either use Flare or summon Bahamut. Because summoning is usually a little bit quicker than spellcasting, so you either get Bahamut in. Like, if you're fighting Zeromus, it's usually better to spam Bahamut than it is to spam Flare. Just a word for the wise, if you ever go back through Final Fantasy IV, go get Bahamut in the Moon Cave. When you get access to the moon, there's an optional little shrine off to the distance. Just before you go to take on the final boss, clear the place out and take on Bahamut to get it. If you're gonna miss anything in the game, that's the one you shouldn't. There's a lot of little things that you can miss and just not bother with, mostly with summons. That's one of the ones you don't want to. But then in Final Fantasy V, they got it right, and Meteor's suddenly really strong. But it's in a game where you can kind of break it in two, because you can equip any job and have two running at any time, so you can make some really overpowered sets that kind of minimize any need for spells like Flare and Meteor. Good, you have come. The viral has attacked a creature with massive wings. It is not far. Come. Massive wings? That's not very hopeful. Oh, I never interacted with 8, 9, 10. I was like, why did I stop on this one? Didn't I clear them all out before I went to pick up the hunt? Apparently not. But you're seeing me zigzag a little bit, because with some of these hunts, like some of the more dangerous ones, I do a little bit of practice on before I go to take them. But some of the more generic ones, I don't. And so sometimes I forget exactly where they're actually located. Like, I know it's in this zone, so I know I'll stumble it eventually, but you're going to see me zigzag a little bit just to hopefully spot it. But this is the windmill that a side quest will be tied to later on, so remember that one in the top right zone of the lot, the right windmill. Or just windmill 10 if that's easier. Whatever's easier for you to remember. Is that it? I need to get closer. Here it is. You might look big and scary, but this one really isn't too bad. We've gone through far worse hunts. But you're going to see me still approach with some element of caution, and so whacking slow at it from right out the gate to try and just give us an easier time. But then watch its health bar start to drop. I was a bit like, oh, never mind. Especially because the extra assistance we've got for this fight, you might have noticed, immediately casted Protect and Shell on everyone. And so we've got a boosted stats anyway, so it's even less of a threat. Partway through the fight though, this thing will make itself immune to magic, but well, it doesn't matter. It has so little health by the time it does it that you should be able to kill it easily, and the viral is vanquished. We are victorious. I will reward you for your courage. Visit me at the Whitecap of Baffleheim. I shall await you there. Baffleheim being the port we was at down south. Just in case you get confused with the names. I say that, I'd like to think I've never actually gotten confused with the names of 12. I say that ignoring jungles and woods because I always get them a little muddled up. Like, I don't forget their names, I just get muddled sometimes on which one's which. Like, the Salika Wood is the one up north, the Golmore Jungle is the one in the south when you're heading your way towards Spur Hemisace. The wood beneath that, I can't remember its name off the top of my head, but we'll be going there later on anyway, so what's it matter? But yeah, but other than that, like, I've usually been pretty good at remembering the names. The only time it's bit me in the backside is when I went to do a bit of practice before I even started recording this game. When I started doing a little bit of practice to try and see if I can get back in the zone of it, I went to a quick save crystal and I was like, God, I haven't played this game in like 2 years. And I looked at the list of names and I was like, where's any of this? And so that's the only problem, because it doesn't mark any of it on the map. I was like, I don't recall this. Where is this? It's the same when I was playing Tales of Berseria, I think like late last year. But I'm not going to record it for YouTube for the simple reason of I can't. If I could, I would. I love Tales of Berseria so much, but the like 99% of the game is counted as block scenes, so I can't record it. My biggest hope is that when the PS5 comes out, they'll make all the PS4 games as blocked scenes turn off. Just because, you know, they're on the previous generation, just so then I can record Tales of Berseria, because it is such an amazing and underrated Tales of game. Well, I know everyone's excited for Tales of Arise because it's a new engine, and people like the old ones because there was a lot of kind of crappy ones after some of those old ones. But Berseria is such a little gem. It really is. It's a gem in the rough. It is such a fun game, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it. I love Tales of Berseria, and I got so close to 100%ing it. Like I say that 100%ed the game, I just didn't get all the trophies because I couldn't be bothered to grind out some of it. And eventually time just escaped me and I never came back to it. Because getting to level 200 is not worth it. I got to like 160 and it wasn't worth it any further than that. It stops being fun to level up after a point. And I wasn't about to go into New Game Plus where it auto levels everyone to like a set point, because you lose so much going into NG Plus anyway, and I dedicate so much time into the save. But it's the same in that game. When I returned to it recently, it also doesn't pin on the map all the quick travel locations. So you go to a quick travel, like you go to the save spot, the quick travel, and it's just a list of names for 3 pages, and you're like, what is any of this? Like, it took me forever to find the frozen grotto, just so I could go back to check on like Eleanor's side quest. Because I was just like, where was it again? I say that if the PS5 does in fact end up turning off recording blocks, there is a lot I will suddenly want to be covering on this, because there's a lot of games on PS4 I've gone like, wow, I really want to cover this. This is probably going to be a really fun game, and then there's been a big chunk of it that's been blocked scenes and it's just killed it. Like Final Fantasy VII, for some insane reason, blocks Aerith's deaths and the ending. And if you're going to try and tell me they're blocking it for spoilers, the game's 23 years old. The time for blocking scenes for spoilers has long since passed. But still, it's the main reason why I haven't recorded FF7. So I would have liked to, with the 7 remake coming out, even if that's kind of the mentality a lot of people are doing, or at least the people I watch on YouTube are doing. Like, I watch some call me Johnny's YouTube gaming channel as well as his main one. And on that channel, SGB, they're doing a run of Final Fantasy VII. Maximilian Dude's doing a run of Final Fantasy VII when he's not doing... Oh, there's telekinesis, by the way, which is great to finally have, because now we can take on flying enemies if anyone in our party had it, which they don't. Yeah, no one in our party can get telekinesis. I was gutted when I saw that. I was like, that's not helpful. I even checked to see if I can give it to anyone, but it never happens. But Maximilian Dude, when he's not sorting out his new PC with his 140 odd frames playing Doom Eternal, is going through FF7 base as well in preparation for the remake. Because he already did, I forget what the mod's called. It's not New Threat, is it? Is it New... Yeah, it is New Threat, maybe. Because one of them's Brave New World, one's New Threat. And I think Brave New World's the mod for Final Fantasy VI, which I have played. And I actually really enjoyed that. The only thing that really kind of pulled it back a little bit was the overinflated health bars on some of the bosses. But I did enjoy it not necessarily being harder for the sake of harder, but just being better balanced, because 6 is so easy to break otherwise. It's part of the reason why I find the second half of the game kind of disappointing, because if you start trying to get the full party together, which you kind of... It's not a matter of which ending you prefer, it feels like it's a necessity. You should get the whole party back together for the final boss. By the time you've done it, you've done so much needless work. You've done a little bit of grinding you probably didn't want to do, but you've done so much needless work and repetitiveness with it that you're just kind of done. And then you also find yourself so ridiculously overpowered when you go into Kefka's tower that nothing stands a chance, not even Kefka. Especially if you do the Maggie tower. Or the Magi Tower. When I was a kid, I called it the Maggie Tower because I didn't know any better, and it just kind of stuck. But when you go up the Magi Tower, you get the ability to do double cast, and if you've already got Ultima for Terra and Celis, you're hitting Kefka with probably 3 Ultimas, because the double cast you probably throw on Terra because she's got the better magic stat, and then an extra one from Celis. Suddenly, Kefka dies really quickly. And the final boss just falls apart, and you're like, oh. And I know you can say, oh yeah, but if you wanted the fight to be fun, you wouldn't use it. But then there's a thing called using what the game gives you to its best use, and the game gives you those tools, so you should feel fine using them, and it not break the game so brutally as it does. Also, you can buy your first... I think it's your first grimoire you can buy here, or is it your second? Second grimoire. The second grimoire, the Sage's monograph, will make it so we'll get better loot from elementals. So now there's more of a reason, per se, to take them on. But now to actually advance the plot, we're going south into the Feywood, an area that I told you was too strong for us when we first came here, but said don't worry, it's not actually optional. This is why. This area you have to go through to find your way to Giruvegan. If you tried to explore it earlier, it would only let you go so far, because I'll show when. You get to the save crystal, the path splits a third direction, but that third direction is blocked by a heavy mist that halts your progress, so you can't go through it yet. But get used to hearing this name. Because this area, the second half of this area that we'll be going to when we go towards Giruvegan, kind of became more infamous in optional stuff. One of the last hunts in the game that we will be doing is a hunt against someone called the Behemoth King. And the Behemoth King is the one that everyone very, very fairly criticizes, and I'm kind of going to join it in with it. There are two zones back to back in this entire woods that are the biggest individual zone of an area in the game, I think. And there's a heavy mist going through it as well. The yellowy mist that we know of, that usually signs espers are nearby, that makes it extremely difficult to see. For the Behemoth King to spawn, every single enemy in both those zones has to die. It is so painfully easy to miss one. You will skim and scan over the same zone like 6 times before you go to the other one to do the same thing, just for you to return to the first one and spot one random mantis enemy just appear in the corner, and you're like, where were you? It's just very frustrating, especially in base 12 where you can't speed up time. Because when I eventually go for the hunt, I put the game on quad speed just to try and get it done quicker, and it still ends up taking me a while. I do most of it off screen, and just because I don't want to save you guys distress, like, so you're just zigzagging through it like a dozen times until you know for a fact nothing's there. And the main reason why you're doing it several times is that some of the enemies are actually underground and won't surface straight away, so you need to go over several times so in the hopes that all the ones that are underground will eventually surface. Which, yes, is as dickish as it sounds. Because there's no signal that they're there. They will just eventually pop out of the ground and you'll be like, oh, hi. But I decided to go right first and spawn dead on a trap, which is another thing that I've mentioned it when we was in the Shrine Cave, or the Cave Palace, that was actually called, to be correct, I suppose. That some of the traps can be really dickishly placed. This is the area where you start to feel it a little bit more. So we entered that zone and started on a trap. What are we supposed to do there? Just have everyone on the float before we even enter? No, that's insane. The map for this first zone is here, by the way, but it won't, I believe it doesn't go the full stretch. The map of the Feywood, I believe it doesn't go into the secret path going into Giruvegan. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It only goes in this upper area. Heading towards Giruvegan is technically classed as a secret area. Sorry, my ability to speak is failing me today. Take a sip of my water, see if that makes any kind of difference. There are stronger versions of them, the Cerberuses, that you can find around. Or is it Kerberus? You know, when I was young, there was only one person I knew who referred to it as Kerberus. And so I just assumed it was like, okay, you're mad. But now I hear, like, as a motorbike passes by, like, a lot more people refer to it as Kerberus. There's a lot more of a discussion as whether it's Cerberus or Kerberus. I personally say Cerberus just because it's what I'm used to, and if it's wrong, whoops. But it's just what I'm used to. I'm not really going to change it. I think I called him Cerberus back when we fought him in 15 as well. But you might notice this area is actually relatively close to the Parama Rift, which is why there are odd snow sections here as well. Which is a nice attention to detail. If you look at it on the map, this area is actually pretty damn close to the Paramina Rift. So of course it's going to be snowy in areas because the Paramina Rift is just a giant blizzard. Well, so be wary of these enemies because Sonic Fang, they can stack it and it hurts. Like, if they only use it to once, it's not too bad, but if they stack and like use it regularly, it's amazing how quickly it can build up even at a higher level. The only thing that kind of makes it easier to deal with is that it has a very distinct audio cue when they're using it, so you absolutely know they're using it. And it's also around this stage of the game, well, I'll say that if you've gone to the Lucio Mines, you've already encountered some, but this is the first time in the main plot that you're going to be encountering enemies that naturally have haste on them. Here's your save crystal, by the way. The path will take a left or a right. The left path is to go towards Giruvegan. That spirit seems to be guiding us, so let's not go that way right now. Sorry, but we haven't explored all of up here yet, and if you've been following the project at all, you know I like to explore everything before we move on to the next zone. I'm not just going to ignore this section here just because we can go onwards. I'd like to say this is around the time that I start kitting out Barsh's gambits with items. So he has like an item that says if infected with slow, use the Chronos tier, if infected with poison, use an antidote, etc, etc. Just because someone might as well be making use out of them instead of me having to manually do it each time. And it also fill out Barsh's slots, because until he gets 4 specific techniques that are all about stat lowering the enemy, his gambits are kind of useless right now. The only thing he really needs is Phoenix down and use of an ether, which I don't think I've even equipped on him yet. And attacking, obviously. Oh yeah, this is where I turn off Balthier using slow, because a lot of the enemies will start using reflect as well. So I'm like, you know what, Balthier, you're just slowing us all down, so let's just, you know, not. Actually, this might be around the time that I decide to put a Chronos tier on the gambits, as I'm getting everyone to get it off them. As I smile and look towards the screen, hoping that past me was smart enough to do it now. I guess I wasn't. Oh, sorry, we found another Chronos tier. I suppose that makes up for the 4 or 5 we've already wasted, that we get 1 more back. You can see there's even ice in the water. Broken ice, like someone's been going at it with a hammer, but there is still ice across the waterline as well. It is a very cold environment. It's just, it's not cold enough for it to be entirely covered in snow. Just partially covered in snow, I suppose. There's also a good natural way to stack your ethers if you haven't been doing any of the hunts and are quite low on ethers because of it. Because you can only really buy them from the guild shop. Also, this little fecker, as soon as you run up to it, it's just like, yeah, you have a bit of confusion. Enjoy that. Hope you have a new Kai-san, or you're killing one of your own team members. Especially if it's Barsh, because his base attack stat, he could absolutely rinse one of his party members if he needed to. And see, you can get ethers quite reliably here. If you just circle the 3 zones, it will reset the chest so you can grind ethers. It's just not worth it when you can just grind some cash and spend a little bit of time doing the hunts to get the guild to sell ethers. Especially because ethers as a whole are going to remain a very helpful tool for the duration of the entire adventure. Well, they remain helpful until we can buy high ethers, which is significantly later on, and I only use it for 1 fight. Here's an interesting thing. This pathway leads you to the back of the Hen Mines. And you might think, oh, this is the optional second area you can explore. You can't. This is just a back door with 2 Abyssals, which are from the 3rd area of the Lucio Mines waiting for you. The main reason being is that they don't want you to enter the Hen Mines for a very long time. The second area, the Hen Mines, is one of the most dangerous areas in the game, ignoring a particular one we're going to later. It is extremely dangerous, and so they do not want you to go there yet. And the very last and most powerful Esper in the game waits for you in the second half of the Hen Mines. If you wish to get into the second half now, you need 10 Espers. So you're not going in now. No matter how much you want to try, you're not going in. You need 10 Espers, and then you need to go to Jahara and speak to a Geomancer. He's in the second zone of it. There's a geomancer, I can't remember his name. And that if you speak to him, will award you for your strength and unlock a door to where the boss room was on our first visit to the Hidden Mines. Head back there, then take a right to where that locked door was, and you can enter the second zone. At the end of the second zone is the strongest, and it's a secret Esper, because the game only lists 12 and it's the 13th one, so it is a secret one. But that being said, we do have a boss fight, so I should probably shut up to talk about it. This boss, you see that little symbol in the top next underneath our minimap? MP down. Our MP is rapidly draining throughout this whole fight, meaning your magic ability towards this is only so helpful. And the first thing it did was cast a Disable on the whole party, so I had to swap out to get Penelo in and hope that her Remedy Law was good enough to get Disable off people. Which thankfully it was, so we can get rid of her and get Ash back on. In reality, I should have taken Balthier off and used it on Ash, because Ash, you know, has that. But then it gets worse, because this status condition spamming annoying thing just put disease on everyone. So we've got no MP to deal with it. Most of the party's confused, so we're all running in different directions doing different random things. And now we've got disease, so any damage we take is going to become our maximum health as well. Also, if you've got any ethers on your gambits, take them off now. The only way you're dealing with this fight is through physical attacks. If you don't let your ethers just get wasted automatically like this, because it will go too fast. It takes me a little too long to realise, so I'm like, oh wait, yeah, oh, thank goodness, I did actually put it on Bash in the end. I was starting to think I hadn't. So eventually it's just like, look, just push through, deal with the poison if you can, and accept the fact you've got 0 MP for all of this. The only thing that can really suck is that you can summon Malboros, and Malboros will also inflict status conditions. Like, it's just a status condition based fight, so you need to turn it into a physical gauntlet. If you're struggling, if you've got a character with Remedy Law, have them back up. Have them be a little bit away from the fight, and have the other two carry on. But the fight shouldn't be too bad. You've definitely fought worse, but at the same time, you've fought better. But that's kind of the last real test, because there is more bosses and more things to fight, but that one's almost there to make sure you're ready for what's to come as we push towards Giruvegan. Like, it's more of a warm-up test than it is an end zone test. And the thing is, because it's immediately after the save crystal, we can immediately U-turn and get rid of the fact that we all have 0 MP. But I still spend the remedies to just clear people up, get them in a better position. Which even that was a bit of a waste, because it would have been cleared anyway. The only thing that you might have just noticed as well, do you see how because Bash and Balthier were not taking an action of any kind and just moving, their MP started to regenerate, but because Ash was still taking an action, so not moving, her MP stayed still. Movement is what regenerates your MP, not time. If you just stand still, it won't build. You need to be running. If you're in an area where you have no ethers and you're in a dangerous spot and you can't escape, find somewhere vaguely safe and, I don't know, like elastic band these sticks together, so then you're running in a circle just so you can regenerate your MP. But this is what I was referring to. Or is it the next area? No, it's the next area. But this level of thickness in the fog is kind of what I mean. Where you can barely see anything, and starting from the next zone, if you want to get the Behemoth King to spawn once you've accepted that hunt, everything needs to die. But as you just saw there, that snake came out from underground. There's a whole host of those, and that's what makes it so annoying to do. Thankfully, most of them will come up on your first visit, but a handful of them won't. You'll have to go back over it, and that's what ends up making it so painful. But here's your Fayward Candle, so you can get the rest of it. And those two areas is what I was referring to. If you want the Behemoth King to spawn, you need to clear every single enemy in both of those zones, and you can't miss any of them, otherwise the thing will not appear. just for them to think to actually be a really annoying and pretty tough fight. It's not the hardest, but it's annoying. But I say that the Behemoth King, you get a trophy / achievement for killing because they value it higher than a lot of other things. But at the same time, I've never found it that bad. Also, we did just pick up a golden amulet, which is our 3rd one, meaning we can technically have the entire party getting double license points. But at this stage in the game, you should be in a situation where you don't need that many extra license points because you should have everything that you wanted to get. The only things you should be missing are just clearing the board. Like with your physical attacker, I can imagine the only thing you need to clear is the last of the gambits. For your magic users, it's just some of the equipment you haven't used yet. Things like that. It's stuff that isn't as significant that you'll get eventually. But this is the first zone, and the way it works is that there's actually a maze going on here where you're trying to get through. There are these glyphs around the zone that you need to interact with. When you interact with one, a different one in the area will light up. When you interact with that, a third will light up. When you interact with that, the door will allow you to pass. So you interact with this one, and another one is lit up somewhere. In this sanctum, so you find the true path. So you now need to find the true path. And you see me double check it just to make sure I'm on the right way. So you see me glance at the map and consider it and be like, okay, which path am I taking? And eventually just push one direction and see where I end up. Which is the wrong direction because this one is not lit. This one is actually the only one that doesn't light in the area. Because I did want to show off what happens if you get it wrong anyway, but it was just the fact that I should have at least gone straight south, but no, I went west instead. You can also find these behemoth knights around as well, so that can be pretty scary because behemoths as a whole are usually a little intimidating. And I think that's the other worst thing. There's loot here. Look, can you see anything? Like, you can't really see 5 feet in front of you, and you want to tell me that there's loot here? And not only that, well, I was half expecting one of them to be something decent then. But not only that, there's a bubble belt here. You know, the thing that doubles your max health, something that's amazing to have. By the time we get to the main super bosses later on, I'm in a situation where I have 3 bubble belts, so I can put them on each of our main characters to give them more survivability. But this is the next glyph that lights up that you're supposed to interact with, which lights up the 3rd one by the door. But you need to interact with that 3rd one, otherwise it won't count, and when you go through you'll just kind of be locked out for it, as we get a chakra band. Oh, is it not our first one? I'm guessing it's not by the fact I'm having to scroll for it. It's a headpiece. It's a headpiece, Rob. Come on past me. Work it out. Yeah, it's light armor though, so we're not using it. Because chakra is usually for restoring MP or SP in Persona more often than not. So I can see why my first assumption would be that it's an accessory, not a headpiece. And that's assuming I'm even pronouncing it right. There's another thing, because I've only ever read it, I've never heard anyone say it. I've always just assumed it's pronounced chakra or chakra. It might even be something like chakra or something weird like that, but I don't know. But since we haven't interacted with the 3rd shrine, when you go through here, we're back where we started. We didn't proceed onwards. So you need to interact with this. I don't think you need to interact with them again, you just need to turn them on. But for the sake of showing the path, I show you the order you're supposed to interact with them. As another loud vehicle passes me by. I say that, my window's closed right this second, so hopefully it won't go through as easily. It's not quite the summer yet, where anytime a vehicle passes by, the mic picks it up just because I've got my window open. Interact with this one, and then the last one is dead ahead in front of us. Well, in front of the direction I'm going. This one. You see, you'll see me double check the 4th area as well just before we go to see if it's like a circle. It's not. Once you interact with that one, you are safe to move onwards. Ta-da! And it's the same in the 2nd zone. There's 3 glyphs, you need to interact with them, and then it will let you go towards the door. But the door has a 2nd little thing to it, which is easy enough to do. It's just you might not realise you're supposed to do it straight away. But I'll get to that in a second. We just got to get there first. Just all I'm going to say is don't waste your technique bar. You only need 1 slot, but still don't use a quickening or use a summon yet, because you're going to need one of the summons to do it. And don't worry, it's not an optional summon that you need to open the door. It is a mandatory one. But there's your first one that you need to interact with, so you might as well start circling the area looking for that 2nd one. There it is. And then the 3rd one, I believe, is literally right at the door. But of course, I've still got to explore all of this out before we go. When you're going for the Behemoth King, clear out the zone I'm in now first, because this is where the Behemoth King spawns, so you might as well just do it first. Because then you only do the 2nd area and clear out, you come back to it, and it's done a loop of the spawn, so the Behemoth King will be here. Otherwise, you're killing everything to just leave and re-enter anyway. Reflectga is just sitting there, calm as can be, which is a bit of another one of those why would you put that there in the middle of this blizzard where it's impossible to see? Put a spell that you want. Like I said, Reflector can be very situational. Reflect on the whole party. Well, any healing you do is going at the enemy now, so it can be quite situational. But if you can get Reflector on an enemy that spams healing, you're saving yourself a lot of work. It's part of the reason why I want specifically the PSP version, but Final Fantasy IV to be re-released on current platforms in some form or fashion, preferably in some kind of collection. Also, there's an invisible enemy in here as well, the Giruvegan. You know, just to even more add to the problem of trying to kill everything here. But Final Fantasy IV had some pretty clever fights. Like, there was a boss that would heal for far more than you could ever hurt it. So you had to catch on to the fact that you were supposed to use Reflect on it, so anytime it tried to heal, it would just be sending it to you. This is the door in question. If you go to, it says Gate Gigas, or Gigas, and it tells you the Gigas holds away. And even though it tells you that, you might be forgiven for not 100% realizing it's referring to Belias the Gigas. Like, it's outright telling you the one that is referred to as the Gigas or the Gigas is the one it wants you to summon. So summon Belias, then just interact with the door, and then it will open for you. Well, say it will open for you. Belias will open it for you. And I think this is the only time we've heard that so far that we've actually heard the summon theme. I think this is the first time we've actually summoned something, which is a bit sad, because I should have tried to use them more often. They're just not all great. The only one that I'd be likely to use if I were to use one would be Zeromus, but we're not getting Zeromus for a while yet. But once you've got it, proceed through the door and get ready for your cutscenes. We're now in Giruvegan.
On the farthest shores of the River of Time, shrouded deep in the roiling mist.
What is it, Fran?
The mist runs thick here.
Like on the Leviathan?
Do not worry, I will behave myself. The mist here is cooled. I sense something like the shadow here.
Fena. It appears Sid has yet to arrive. We'll lie in wait for him here.
So we're not going inside?
Not unless you want to end up twisted. Like the old man. Something there.
What is it?
She can see him. Let's follow her.
It's a good thing the rest of the party understood what Vaughn said immediately, because she can see him. Who's him? Lord Rassler? Anyway, next time on Final Fantasy XII, we'll be exploring the ancient city of Giruvegan. Exciting, I know, but until then, you guys take care now.